Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's just hop in real quick here. We ended a little bit early on July 4th because I had a party to go to, and that happened, and that was fine. Whatever. But that did leave us not getting through quite as much news. And then today, I'm starting late because there was a power outage right about in 5 in the morning that happened for an hour or two, so that made it incredibly hard, incredibly hot, and incredibly hard to sleep. Um, so yeah, I'm starting late because of that. That is the double danger certainly, which is going to make this be a fairly long stream, so we will want to do as much as possible to wrap up all the news as fast as possible today. Um, for the accountability section, I finished and then Harvey's New Eyes. Uh, Wasted about 4 hours speed running the game a second time just to get to the ending to see the different endings. And of the different endings, the what I would call true ending, the third ending, um, is probably the best ending of the game. But overall, Harvey's New Eyes just desperately would needed a second pass and a rethink of how it, how it connected themes, because it really didn't connect themes, and how it used characters, and there's just a lot of stuff that would have made a lot more sense. Um, at the beginning of Harvey's New Eyes, you accidentally end up killing a bunch of kids in the convent for comedic effect, and then the rest of the game you spend trying to kill these mental manifestations of behavior blocks that have been hypnotized into the character Lily. It would have made a lot of sense thematically for the behavior blocks and the monsters she sees when she's hypnotized to actually be the kids, or at least for there to have been some connection there at all. Because what it does, the way it is depicted, is it just leaves. Um, it just totally leaves you with this situation where the first chapter is almost completely a disconnected experience compared to the second chapter and third chapter. Okay. So I'm thinking that the pattern when I play these cards should be more like this. You do that one, then you activate that, and then you disconnect that. Oops. Nope, that pattern won't work. So that's not the way to do it. So it needs to be probably 4 first, because we never do anything with 4. Then 1, then 3. As far as the way these are always ordered, which is nice that they are consistently ordered, but there's really no reason why they wouldn't be consistently ordered either. I also managed to play just one episode of Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, and frankly, in the 1 hour kind of setup there, all I really confirmed is that yes, I am more than willing to play on the easiest of settings there, and that there is Wolfenstein 3D remade like the Doom original Doom secrets that had remade sections. Let's see, at this point, probably is better just to do this. Oddly, that doesn't work. Alright, well, this is as good of a place as any to start. There are definitely problems, though, with the Old Blood in that it has this head bobbing feature that you can't really turn off. It has really bad pop-in, at least in the tutorial level, that you can't do anything about. It just doesn't quite feel polished enough for a 2015 game. And then you also have it weirdly being an alternate universe on an alternate universe and a prequel to the reboot / sequel of the New Order. And then you just also kind of have this weirdness where I just don't see how you can ever make Wolfenstein as a series consistently successful anywhere as much as I think you can do with Doom. Because you can basically make a new Doom game every couple of years, and I don't think anybody's going to care or be upset by that. But every single time you make a Wolfenstein game, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you're talking about weird mechanical mecha Hitler type characters and Nazis and World War II. And even though Call of Duty and other series like that have been fairly good about just milking World War II over and over again, even those series are losing luster at this point. Plus, I doubt Call of Duty and all of that really has too much of a fan base that really cares about the time setting as much as they just care about it playing well and being somewhat accurate and somewhat consistent, having a big player base. If the first-person shooter multiplayer players really cared about World War II as a setting, then Halo would have never become successful. Now, they will certainly care, and all of a sudden start to care a lot more, which that's a real emotion, certainly, isn't it? Plenty of people don't care about things until it's brought to their attention, and then they do start to care about them. So when the amputee lady was being pushed as the main character of a Call of Duty or first-person shooter, and they were told, if you don't like it, don't buy it, and most notably people did not buy it, they did start to care at that point because it just broke realism in a series that sold itself as realism. And if anything, that was the problem in the first place, is that the series had sold itself as being fairly realistic up until that point. But having missing an arm and then being able to hold a rifle and fire it does not ring realistic in that time frame. So anyways, I imagine I'll just churn through Wolfenstein the Old Blood fairly quickly. It does definitely feel like the old Wolfenstein games without as much regenerative health and armor, and no regenerative armor. It definitely feels like it's going to be a fairly short game. But it'll be fine for our Halloween block. It's probably not going to be that scary as a game either. I would heavily suspect that there's not going to be as much of a emphasis on horror. And the big difference between Old Blood, I assume, is going to be that BJ Blazkowicz in this alternate universe doesn't get put in a coma and wake up decades later. There definitely is a heavy implication that there's some level of time manipulation going on in the Wolfenstein multi-universes, and that your the Old Blood may be the 4th or 5th different cycle of going back and changing things. I honestly wouldn't be surprised though if the official Wolfenstein 3 in that reboot comes out, wraps up, and then it disappears for quite a while. Because the old style of picking up health kits and then overcharging your health and then having the health slowly go back down from that overcharged amount over 100% down to 100%. So if you get a health kit and it gives you 125 health, you can have 125 health, but every second you're just losing another health going back. That concept and that gameplay style, I think, is just antiquated. Plus, the Doom reboots and the Wolfenstein reboots both don't really emphasize any kind of level expansion or a custom level made by fans. That's where Doom in their Snap Pack really was trying to focus on that, but they haven't really made any progress towards that. Put that in the graveyard. Activate that. And then go ahead and just activate. Alright. Alright, so then we want to do this. And then this, and this. It's so much work. Yeah, and I guess I just didn't really do anything else, so for the accountability section I can end at just 13 minutes, because, yeah. I finished watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV, which is, whatever that is, Apple TV Plus, whatever, which, it's a pretty good series, and I'm shocked that I could relate to it as well as I could, considering it does give off this feeling that it is going to be very much around a soccer or American football or those kinds of movies or those kinds of stories, but really it isn't. It's pretty much a bait and switch, particularly in the second season where there is very, very little focus on the actual game, and even in the first season there was basically no focus on the actual game. But yeah, it's a fine series that probably needs a third season minimum. It probably should go full 5 seasons. But I still am very much leaning towards the thought that Apple TV should be more of a TV production house first and just put those products and those offerings on either Netflix or Hulu or something else. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're just kind of constantly trying to negotiate to say, hey, let's just put this on Disney Plus. Whereas in comparison, I think Disney Plus has a way better offering, and they are constantly trying to make new content. 2 or 3 episode shows every couple months, where Apple TV seems to barely have anything. I think it's been around for a couple of years. I started watching this show called See, that C spelled SEE, where everybody is blind, and it definitely feels like it is a story that is heavily influenced by the likes of Game of Thrones, and I'm not sure I'm really getting enough out of it to really want to watch the whole series. An entire world full of blind people is a little weird. Having watched 2 episodes of C, and I'll just warn people straight out, is that there's just a weird amount of sexuality that pops up out of nowhere, and it is certainly a whole different kind of culture that you've never probably seen before around how all that works. Very specifically, there is a queen that is engaging in sexual activity as she is praying, and as part of a ritual praying, which is weird. A weird twist that just feels like, oh, let's throw that into the mix for, it feels like very little reason. And that seems to be the only character that does that, which then also creates some weirdness. Alright. Problem here is I'm gonna not be able to win regardless. If he can maintain this 3,000 on the field, and I've already played my 2 moves, I need the trap. Like that really is the only thing left to play. Because I can activate this, and I can summon like this, and this. We can banish those. This is taking forever. Let's see. Let's see, that one points this. I can activate this and shuffle that into the deck. But it's going to take quite a while before we can do anything else. So that means we are then painted into a corner. Hi. Here's the hope. That this one and this one brings this to the field. And then we can activate this effect. Alright, we got it. Let's leave it all at that. Attack. Destroy this. This will potentially save him one turn. But as long as I can destroy this, I have a chance. Yep. Okay, we've got that. Alright, so I said that this was going to take a while, and this was going to be a long stream, so we should just start going through the video game news fairly quickly. I'll say the YouTube shorts feel like they are maybe slowly gaining some success, but it is, I think, fairly slow process. Like, oddly, it was really a case that they are, oh, what's the best way to say this? It definitely feels like it's more of a case that the YouTube shorts are just satisfying the evil YouTube algorithm, which is, you might as well just call it evil, and then that is promoting other content on my channel more than actual humans actually watching the YouTube shorts. And there is definitely this narrative that very quickly TikTok or Instagram or both are going to fall out of favor / be banned completely from American ISPs. I don't know how you really ban them, but we'll see. Which might make YouTube Shorts successful, as it's only the only option. Alright, we're back to the same problem here. Let's see. Deadline says the Duffer Brothers, the makers of Stranger Things, are launching a Netflix. Shingle Upside Down Pictures is a production studio for a Stranger Things spin-off, and a Stephen Daldry helmed stage play coming along with the manga Death Note, and a Stephen King / Peter Straub the Talisman series. So there's several announcements there. It seems fairly odd that you would once again try to make a new live action series of Death Note when Netflix was horrifically made fun of for their last attempt of making Death Note. But this may just be a case that Netflix trusts the Duffer Brothers and their major success in Stranger Things, or has nobody else really that they can trust. So that they have to put their faith in their most successful group of people. If anything, maybe Netflix has seen that they've gambled too much on too many things. Although, arguably, I'd say that's probably not the way I would hope it would be seen. I would hope that they would gamble a little bit more on more varied people. But I'm also not particularly upset by the large amount of garbage that could be on Netflix or that is on Netflix. None of this has too much to do with video games or anything to do with video games. But yeah, an original series from the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance creators, the Talisman series, stage play set in the world and mythology of Stranger Things, which that seems particularly weird that they would make a stage play that very potentially won't even be on Netflix. But it might also be a case that it gets, the stage play gets made, it goes on off Broadway or an off Broadway theater, which doesn't inherently mean it's actually off of the Broadway street. It means it's less than a certain number of seats, I believe. But yeah, I could see them doing just a week of performances in an off-Broadway theater and then recording it and putting it on as just a DVD extra. Like, inherently, not everything has to be solely focused around being a AAA type production. It could just be, we need some extras because we're going to actually sell Stranger Things DVDs. But even the thought there is mired in some potential controversy, because do you really want Netflix to feel like they've thrown in the towel and that they're just going to release a box set of Stranger Things? Probably for Stranger Things, yes. Not for everything Netflix has ever made. But as Stranger Things wraps up, I could see 2-3 years after the last Stranger Things season happens, which definitely seems like season 4 is going to be the last season. Or the next season after this season is going to be the last season, I think. Just because of kid actors. So I could see waiting 2 or 3 years and then saying, hey, let's just get this into Walmart and try and convince a few of the people who still are buying DVDs at Walmart that maybe Netflix is something that's worth their time to learn how to do. Some of the older people that at this moment are absolutely swearing off ever learning any new streaming service or any kind of technology like that. And then let's see, a Stranger Things live action spin-off series based on the original idea of the Duffer Brothers. And it is really also a question. I haven't finished watching all of Stranger Things season 4, and I didn't realize we were in season 4. Actually, I was thinking season 4 was just announced and that I was watching season 3, but I guess we are watching season 4. I think. I don't know. There definitely are middle parts of Stranger Things that are somewhat forgettable now in this sandwich of entertainment they're making. But yeah, I could also see the Duffer Brothers putting their names on things when not really having much involvement on it. And we can connect that to video games because they have announced that they're going to remake Lollipop Chainsaw, which, okay. Although the way they describe it, I think personally would more label it as a remaster at the moment, but they're calling it a remake, and there's not a lot of news out there. And as soon as that announcement came out, both Suda51 and James Gunn, both the main names put on Lollipop Chainsaw, came out and said that they don't have any involvement with it. So yeah, it doesn't feel to me like that they would have time to do that, and it's probably better that they are not going out of their way to spend time remaking Lollipop Chainsaw. But not having those big names on it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that any new content that they put in the remake is going to be particularly good or interesting. Although there may not really be that much new content. It may be very much a straight remaster of what the original game was. Well, this will get us so far. Play this, put this here. Didn't activate that effect. Can't activate that. I could then summon a 3. If I were to summon this, it says you can, from a hand or graveyard. Yeah. Let's just leave it here. To start with. So this guy keeps playing cards and hurting himself. Doesn't seem like he's playing particularly well for his own strategy. You should put that over here. Enter. Yeah, and it does seem like, according to Variety here, YouTube retweeted this, that YouTube Shorts have had more than 1.5 billion monthly video viewers, Google claims. So it does seem like it is something that is getting some level of growth. Although, in all fairness, even as somebody who is engaging with it themselves, I'm not seeing a lot of shorts that are good or that I actually want to click on and watch. Like that is why I'm being incredibly automated with the content I'm making and not putting any real effort or not a lot of extra effort into it, because the truth of the matter is it's just not that good of content, and it just really can't be that good of content. You have at most 60 seconds to say something, and the vast majority of the videos are just going to be these super abridged, super dumbed down things. It is scary, certainly, if YouTube Shorts became the default form of entertainment that everybody engaged with, where they only wanted 3 sentences of information with no nuance, no details. That's, although at a certain level that is the situation I'm in, where I play long plays and show all of the gameplay footage, and yeah, there is probably a high percentage of people that prefer heavily edited experiences. Like, I guess Video Game Donkey might be the quintessential example of that, or let's see, he's just figured out a way to win. Unless there's something I can do. Oh, interesting. Why did he do it that way? If he had destroyed this, we would have tied. Or I would have died and he would have won. I think he just let me win there by making a mistake. He had more than 2,300 health points. If he had used the Ring of Destruction to do 23 to me and him, he would have won at that point, and none of the other cards should have activated. Are these still normal cards that we're getting? Yes. Yep. In the last stream, I talked about this article from Video Games Chronicle that an archivist has made every single English language Super NES manual available online. More than 840 manuals can be accessed on the site, from one site. The number's a little wrong there. It's about 744 that are in English, and then the rest are Super Famicom Japanese. And it's not particularly a good website. It's a very cheap website that links to many different variations of it. Best I could figure, the one you really would want to download would be the 744 collection of PDFs. If anything, it's probably a step one on the way to getting. It's probably the first step towards getting it in a much better format, and hopefully at some point even having an API. Ideally, PDFs would be readable. This is the archive.org part of the website. There's a website in between that just kind of points you to the archive.org links. But ideally, you'd like more of an API and emulation station to be able to integrate to that via scraper, and then the scraper would be able to download the manuals. But it is a nice first step, and I would say, yeah, coming over here and clicking PDF here for 224 files is the one to go for, whereas some of these other ones might be useful for special needs, but a lot of them I don't think matter. Or if you just want to read them, you can scroll up here and pick the game you want and click on it, and it will load the viewer directly into it, and then you can just get this little nice animated tilting animation. It is probably the case that each and every one of these games, at least at one time, the game manuals would be considered copyrighted. So I wouldn't be surprised if these get taken down fairly quickly. It may be in part that Nintendo can only copyright claim the ones that were actually the manuals that were actually made by Nintendo. Nintendo might try to make a claim that the Super Nintendo logo itself is copyrighted and try and take them all down, but that would be something that wouldn't really stand up in court. Not that anybody's going to actually take Nintendo to court, but Konami, for instance, here could definitely claim that the words and images in this Batman and Robin Konami game, Adventures of Batman and Robin, are copyrighted. And I doubt it's been 75 years past the death of the creator, which is, I think, what Disney got it up to, as far as how long copyrights last. And this is just yet another great example of where having copyrights last that long does not make any sense, because nobody is has been selling Super NES games or is going to be selling Super NES games to a level that they would benefit the creator enough that it overbalances how much it being in the public domain would benefit all of society. And like, copyright's supposed to be a very limited monopoly to benefit the creator of an art piece for a short time, on the understanding that in the long term it will become public domain and all of society will benefit from it. But yeah, I would say if you're afraid of these files disappearing, get the PDF versions. If you have a ton of extra hard drive space, since it's not really taking up that much space anyways, you could probably download every single version and you'd still be fine. And once again, the heat is hitting me, so I'm starting to feel tired and dizzy. It is getting ridiculous, frankly. We need to start to actually think about, in some parts of the world, just building entire cave cities. Entire cities that are giant infrastructures buried into caves, buried underground to maintain proper temperature. That would be hard to do, but might not be as hard to do as you would think. As gross as it might sound, if we were to build buildings on the surface of some cities right now, and then bury those same buildings in a layer of dirt and then a lot of layers of already existing trash from landfills, you could get a lot of film material from that. Something here is breaking all of my ability to activate anything. Right. What is influencing me? So we'll activate this effect, and we'll see if this lets me destroy that. Nope. Moving on with video game news, we got some Video Games Chronicles articles. Netflix has released the opening credit sequence for Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which we won't watch all of it, but we can see that this definitely feels like an anime style intro, even if it really isn't anime in my book. That being said, like most anime intros, that opening credits may look absolutely nothing like what the actual show looks like. Let's try this again. Destroy this, then activate this. Well, that didn't work either. I think I may have negated my own card there. Alright, well. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can do here. The fact that the Cyberpunk game itself didn't really succeed and didn't have an amazing story would only make it worse if Cyberpunk Edge Runners actually did succeed. And looking at this art style, it does kind of feel like the new way they animate the new way that they animate Ghost in the Shell, and I don't like that CG style of animation. Yeah, neither of those effects are going to activate. Moving on, Bungie is reportedly making a Destiny game for mobile with China's NetEase, which, okay, that's believable and not something I really care about. Nintendo has revealed a new Splatoon 3 multiplayer map called Mincemeat Metalworks, which, okay. Is Splatoon 3 out yet? No, it's coming out September 9th. So, yeah. That would make some sense. Alright, my hope is now we can special summon all of these to break this terrible card. I shouldn't summon that card, actually, come to think of it, because it does just have that summoning animation. Of course, this effect also won't work. So I'm screwed here. To a certain level. Like, even this effect doesn't activate, so that has just created a scenario here where we very possibly will win, but it's going to be the hard way. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle has an article here. It has been confirmed that Deus Ex's writer will work on the next Mass Effect. Mary DeMarle has joined BioWare as a senior narrative director. I guess that's good, although, like, whatever Mass Effect is going to be in its now second attempt to reboot / continue that story is very much up in the air as far as I think. Like, I just don't see there being a major focus around Shepard or oh, that effect doesn't work, which means none of the effects will work. Yeah, that was dumb. See if we can just then get something with slightly more attack. Does that effect work? In the graveyard? Yeah, the general concept of Mass Effect, as it was originally pitched, is that you were going to have this universe-spanning major impact and effect, thus Mass Effect, or Massive Effect. And they did a pretty good job around that in the original Mass Effect trilogy of sticking towards that idea. So, generally speaking, I imagine you will be playing as some kind of special character, and you'll be running around doing missions, mostly first-person shooting, with some level of conversation. It would be very weird if significant portions of the game or otherwise were changed as to what happens. There is definitely going to be a question, though, will that be enough? Because Mass Effect will also be competing with things like Dragon Age, Dragon's Dogma. If there's a new Witcher game, there's pretty much every game is going to have not every game, but a lot of AAA games are going to be very similar to Mass Effect in the sense that you'll have a character, he'll have a skill tree, he'll be going on missions, he'll be doing first-person shooting, and there'll be a lot of conversations. In a funny way, Mass Effect introducing more dialogue and dialogue wheels, and basically taking that from Telltale, has just become the standard. So you're going to have to write very lovable characters in a new Mass Effect to make it stand out, or you're going to have to put in a new type of gameplay mechanic. Otherwise it is going to feel far too much like a lot of other games. And that does happen quite often, where somebody establishes a new standard and is successful by establishing that new standard, but then that is just the new standard, so everybody else has to try even harder to establish a new standard. And a lot of Mass Effect at the moment feels like it's heavily only surviving on nostalgia for Mass Effect 1 and 2, and trying very hard to forget 3 and Andromeda. It might be better to just put Mass Effect on the back burner for a decade and then bring it back when people will have not forgotten about 3 and Andromeda. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak ships 2 million in its first week. Will Rise while Rise, Monster Hunter Rise, breaks 10 million. So the game Rise breaks 10 million. Sunbreak, I assume, is kind of more of a DLC to Rise, or maybe a sequel. I actually don't have as much news as I would have thought we would have had. Rockstar has scrapped planned GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption remaster, it's claimed. An insider suggests that poor reception of the GTA trilogy remasters may have led to the decision. I've also heard that it's to focus on GTA 6, which arguably they should have been already focusing on GTA 6 because they're not really putting out anything. It's hard to really recognize it, but I wouldn't be surprised if what's happening at Rockstar is that there is just no strong leadership and they are bouncing around ideas and starting projects, canceling projects, starting different projects, canceling projects. Meanwhile, every year there's another year going by where all they're putting out is a GTA online update at most. And certainly it is not an example of good leadership to say we cheaped out and hired a third-party company to port the mobile versions of the GTA trilogy to PC, and then we were surprised when it was poorly received, and have still yet to actually do anything to really address that or fix that, and then just use that as an excuse. This is the old trick that little kids try to do, where their parents tell them to make their bed, and then they make the bed so horribly and so poorly that the kids are hoping the parents will never tell them to make the bed again. It's like, no, that's not realistic. The poor response is one of the GTA trilogy remasters is 100% on Rockstar. Rockstar throwing their hands up and giving up is just pathetic and childish. But in a lot of ways, I kind of look at Rockstar as just a hollow carcass of whatever Rockstar once was, if there ever was a level of success there that was deserved. I think the teams and people there have gotten too old and just too fat succeeding on GTA and GTA Online, and they don't have that drive within them to actually, they don't seem to have that drive within them to actually try and make new games and better games. And at this point it's so lazily being done that we're not even talking about Rockstar making a new game. That has been off the table for decades. We're instead talking about them just remastering or continuing their two successful series. So I guess it's kind of nice that Bethesda was bought by Microsoft, because Bethesda definitely could have gone the same direction and just gotten a lot more lazy around Elder Scrolls Online and nothing else. But I will say, at least Bethesda was trying other things with, like, Fallout 76. Even if those were failure, that was pretty much a failure. I would be kind of more than happy to see Rockstar put something out and just see it fail. at least they'd be trying at that point. Oh, that sucked, but I think we're cool with that. So here, Video Games Chronicles has the article. A Lollipop Chainsaw remake has been announced for 2023. The game will have, quote, a more realistic approach to the graphics. Its producer claims. I assume it's it, not information technology, IT producer claims. Which, having a more realistic approach on graphics could mean anything, really. Like, because this is definitely not, even when it came out, anywhere close to like a anime style animation. It's fairly realistic. Yes, it would have been a little bit cartoony, like all video games were when this came out, and all still kind of are. Like, we only on very rare occasions are going for 100% realism. And arguably, I don't know if a game like Lollipop Chainsaw benefits if it was 100% realistic. And if they really are going to try and make the zombies look realistic, then they've probably lost the plot. I kind of just assume what they mean is that the graphics will be updated, and in the effect of them being updated, they will look a little bit more realistic, as in any remake game would be a little bit more realistic looking. It is going to not, I assume, be as big of a jump between like Tomb Raider 1 and then the Tomb Raider reboot, or even Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider 3. Of course, this might be a coded language too. This might be a more realistic approach to the graphics. Might be, hey, we're gonna take the cheerleader who, I believe it's like her 16th birthday. They may change that to 18th birthday, which no big change there. It may just be coded language to say, hey, we're going to have less cleavage and maybe even less shoulder showing and less belly showing. This is, as far as a cheerleader outfit, a exaggeration as to what an actual cheerleader, even in a professional like football team, would wear. That they have like usually fabric covering up the stomachs and more arms and sleeves, even if it is fairly hot. And this is definitely not what a cheerleader in high school would wear. What's funny, though, is I think that in the Japanese version of Lollipop Chainsaw, she had black hair and she was more Asian featured. And so because I've definitely seen in some of the promotional materials that the cosplayer playing Juliet, I believe is her name, in Japan definitely has black hair instead of blonde hair. So slightly different version of the game there, and maybe we'll get a different version there. The only other change that they've mentioned so far is that, yeah, and this is informature trailer here, that they don't have the license for all the same music, but some of that will kind of suck. This game and the joke around this game will fall apart completely, though, if this tries to be hyper realistic as a game, because it will just really ruin the jokes and the concepts. It's a fairly short game, and I really would like to see them more focus around uh, making more content and more playable content and making the game a little bit longer. Um, it was more of a game where you get a score at the end, and so it kind of has more of that Devil May Cry concept. I would hope that it would also be like a little bit better to play. There is a point certainly where one of the bad guys is calling her the B word, and he does it in such a way that he summons the letters, and the letters shoot at you like a bullet hell shooter. And it would be interesting to see if that switch if that's censored. But yeah, at the bottom here you say you see critics forgiving its occasionally repetitive gameplay because of its sense of humor and unique style. If you get rid of the sense of humor by censoring it or change the style too much, people are going to lose that nostalgia, and that's in part why I think it would have been better to call it a remaster than a remake, because remake definitely makes it feel like it's starting over from scratch, and I'm not 100% sure that it is really starting over from scratch. So yeah, we'll wait and see. If it doesn't come out ever, that kind of sucks, because then you just need like an Xbox 360 emulator to play it, or an Xbox 360. But and that's really the only reason that this is coming out again, is because it never has had a proper port. I don't think it ever came to PC. So yeah. But if it does come out, I doubt it's going to be even a massive success there, unless we're just going to be in this massive pushback against the current trends, and all of a sudden people are just looking for little weird offshoot games. In a lot of ways, No More Heroes is a competitor to Lollipop Chainsaw, and I think Lollipop Chainsaw may have come out before No More Heroes. So I guess the idea is that with the re-releases of No More Heroes and the continuation of No More Heroes, that did probably prove that there's enough of a demand to justify bringing it out again. And they would be insanely stupid to not just put Pseudo 51 and James Gunn's name all over it, and credit them whether they want to be credited or involved or not. And hopefully they just don't ruin it. It was a mediocre game, I would say. A solid A, but not A plus game originally, so I would like a remake to really improve upon that more. But it wasn't good enough really to play it multiple times to get different scores, to just try and unlock outfits. That is certainly something that also is going to be part of a problem. The audience and the people who would have played Lollipop Chainsaw in the old days looking for titillizing outfits and unlocking that kind of content have long since been given other options. The internet is very much different now, so going through that extra work to see that kind of content is not necessary. Yeah. That is probably, in part, one of the reasons why something like Rumble Roses Double X would somewhat suffer from a remaster or re-release, is that while it might sell a few copies, the fact that the game, the Rumble Roses and Lollipop Chainsaw, are both selling on sex, makes them less likely to be in demand. Alright, well, I'll be darned, that worked. Moving on with the news, we'll follow Lollipop Chainsaw as it gets more announcements. Yakuza 0, Kiwami, and Kiwami 2 have seemingly been added to Game Pass again. They were removed from service in December of 2021. I guess the question was, though, have they sneakily relisted the games with a different voice actor because the voice actor got caught with drugs, or have they just hoped that nobody remembers? I think that was the Yakuza series. Although this article seems to more attribute it to other creators leaving the project. So maybe I'm thinking of a different series, not the Yakuza series. There are two series that are very similar that I can't keep straight in my head. Well, I never remember the name of the other one. Let's see. Nacon will show Lord of the Rings Golem and Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown in a presentation this week, according to Video Games Chronicle. Lord of the Rings Golem is being published by Daedalic Entertainment, and having recently played the Daedalic game, they definitely were advertising it. So I'm confused as to why Nacon is showing this off. Maybe Nacon bought Daedalic at some point and I didn't remember that, or maybe Daedalic's not publishing it anymore, or maybe it's just a French publisher and then a German publisher both advertising it. That's also very possible. I wouldn't be surprised if Lord of the Rings Golem is being published in the United States directly by Warner Brothers, and that it's just being published by multiple different people in multiple different places, which that's not something we see too often in video games anymore. Let's see, apparently 12 new Xbox Game Pass titles for early July have been revealed. There's a list here of games, or in picture, and it definitely is the Yakuza games. But they've also come out and said that they're going to stop offering Xbox 360 games as part of the Game Pass reveal. So either they're going to drop down from getting 4 games, 2 of which were Xbox One or Xbox Series games, and 2 of which were Xbox 360s, and now they're just going to be offering either 4 of the previous generation, current generation games, or still just 2 and only 2 of the previous generation, current generation. 360 is the previous generation at this point. At least I think that's what the announcement meant. It may have meant the other thing, the other way though. It may have meant the Game Pass was just going to stop supporting Xbox 360 users completely, which that would also make some sense. Michael Jordan is revealed as the cover star for NBA 2K's 23 Special Edition, which, okay, that's fine. I don't watch sports, so I haven't heard anything about Michael Jordan lately, which is probably no news is good news. I assume he's still alive, but also I wouldn't be super surprised if somebody told me he died a year ago and I just didn't pay attention to it. Like, he may, hopefully, I guess you would just hope that he's enjoying a retirement and is actually retired at this point. I assume he's actually retired, and not still playing basketball. Let's see. What remains of Edith Finch has been rated for the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. It does seem like this is going to be the continuous trend now. Every game that particularly is made in Unreal or Unity seems to have a very easy path to upgrade and be re-released on current generation consoles. Current generation consoles really just stronger computers compared to previous generation. So games very likely are never going to go away and they're never going to die, and it's going to but eventually flood the news feeds of people when we have just entire lists of games being announced as upgraded backward compatible versions. Here's that story I was talking about. Xbox games with gold will no longer include the Xbox 360 games from October, but it will continue to offer Xbox One games and savings each month. So that means if you have Game Pass Ultimate or Games Gold, they will be telling you you're getting Xbox One games. But if you're only playing on a 360, you couldn't play those games. So it's going to be an incredibly bad decision to maintain Xbox games with gold or Ultimate Game Pass if you only have an Xbox 360. So yeah, financially I don't think that makes a lot of sense to stick with that. And then they have another article here. A new report backs claims that Rockstar shelved remasters to fully focus on GTA 6. There is also, they're saying they could be revisited in the future, which, yay, I'm glad they're not saying they have no intent ever to make a remaster, but why would they make that statement? I don't really see a scenario where you should be happy with Rockstar at any point in the past decade or more, 2 or 3 decades potentially. Like, even if you were a huge Red Dead Redemption fan, even if you were a huge GTA fan or a huge GTA Online fan, it just doesn't ever feel like there was a point where they did right by any of their fandom recently. We've got another one of these on the field. Moving on, the Modern Warfare 2 open beta won't launch until mid-September, it's claimed, according to Video Games Chronicles. Yuji Naki has launched another attack on Square Enix after removing of his former colleague from a photo. The former Sonic team head is still angry about the release of Balan Wonderworld. He does sound pretty crazy, although, and frankly, maybe this isn't good news journalism to just repost and platform somebody who is clearly irate. But he also kind of has a decent argument on the face of it. And it does also feel like there is a level of pettiness and unprofessionalism happening on the part of the other people, Square Enix. And Square Enix is run by jerks, we know. But it is petty and incredibly unethical to edit out a photo of somebody that already exists, effectively creating propaganda and fake news. Nobody likes to use that phrase anymore, certainly, but there is a certain point where that should be considered as bad as lying, as bad as censoring. I mean, they effectively are censoring someone out of history. I'm glad we didn't have the technology at the end of World War II in which people could start editing out Hitler from photos and all the Nazis from photos. It's like, if we had that technology, I imagine there would have been somebody that would have pushed for that, just to either from one side or the other just try to edit out all those photos, all those film reels, and make it disappear. Even if they just tried to black it out and put black bars over his face or eyes, that would be historically wrong. But it is also kind of bad news reporting as far as video game journalism to drag fans and gamers into this fight. Like, we kind of, most people already know that Square Enix sucks. They've done plenty of things already to prove that they suck, and I would assume slightly fewer people know that Yuji Naka is very angry and irate at them. But there really isn't anything actionable towards that news either, as far as the video game consumer. That's not what I had intended to do. I had intended to activate this trap and was not given an opportunity to activate it. Darn it. Alright, well, let's see. Summon this. Activate this. Summon 2 cards, I guess. That's all we got. Which means summon this. Can't activate that. This is making this dangerous. Just continuously try and draw more cards. Then, if I can't activate it now, I don't think I can activate it later, so. Is this a counter trap? No, it says it's just a normal trap. Continuing with the news, we already talked about this. Suda51 and James Gunn say they have nothing to do with the Lollipop Chainsaw remake. The creative director and co-writer aren't involved in the new project. Which, fine. Like, they really don't need to be involved with the new project anyways. So, they probably are just better off not being involved. I can activate this trap for some reason, not that one. Still not being able to activate this trap. Cancel that effect and then cancel this, hopefully. Take this. Darn it. That card doesn't even work with this. So pretty obviously my deck needs some improvement. This article is kind of interesting as it goes further here. James Gunn said, "I neither endorse nor condemn it. I simply do not know anything about it. But as articles are stating, starting to slap our names on it there, I think it's important to make it clear no one ever approached us about it." Suda tweeted, "To add my 2 cents, like James Gunn says, neither he nor I are involved in the project at all, and Grasshopper Manufacturer has nothing to do with the development or anything." In a statement on Tuesday, Yoshida appeared to downplay Suda's role in the original game, suggesting he had more of an advisory role. Suda-san was very busy handling development of other projects at the time. I served as director and producer, creating a joint development team consisting of staff from Grasshopper and Kodakawa Games, overseeing development directly. Suda-san looked over the game design and supervised the project as an executive producer. Yoshida's claim appeared to be at odds with the game's actual closing credits, which lists Yoshida, not Suda, as executive producer and Suda as creative director. Have to play here. Actually don't have to play here because I'm just going to lose anyways. But might as well just let them win. Interesting, he didn't attack. What is going on? Why did he not attack there? I feel like I'm being teased. Let's see if this works. 2, 3, 4. Summon here. Activate. Banish. Activate. Discard. Discard. Summon. Activate. I guess that. Send that to the graveyard. Activate that. Send that to the graveyard. Activate that. Add that to the hand. Alright. It's crazy to do this, but yeah, that was totally insane to do that, but it might work better than it seems. But see, you still would just have to attack me here and then attack with that. Or play a card here that can do 600 damage. Furthermore, despite Yoshida's claims that he served as director and producer, the game credits lists Grasshopper's Tomo Ikeda and Masa Shiodera as director and producer respectively. While claiming that most of the original staff were working on the remake, Yoshida also stated on Tuesday that some elements of the remake will be different from the original 2012 game. For instance, the game had 15 licensed songs used in the soundtrack, but unfortunately it is unfortunately difficult for us to implement all of them this time. As a result, aside from a few licensed tracks, the soundtrack will consist of new music. Additionally, since we have access to consoles with higher specifications, we will be taking a more realistic approach to the graphics this time. Yeah, which in the full sentence quote, yeah, that definitely seems like he's just saying the graphics will look more realistic. Remember, he's speaking Japanese, so he means less cartoony and higher polygon count, but I imagine it still will I imagine it still will be fairly cartoony. And there I lost, finally. In any case, our goal, the quote continues, is to make it easier for gamers who want to play Lollipop Chainsaw to do so. Please look forward in 2023. What's funny is when you really read this article, though, you've got Yoshida kind of coming off as a jerk and potentially a lawsuit excuse me, in the making here, because like just because he didn't do the things that you would have wanted to do, unless it had already been a case that Suda51 and James Gunn had tried to negotiate a remake this whole time, and they were just saying, no, we're not going to support that, we're not going to promote that and advertise that game, unless secretly in the background negotiations are already broken down. You would definitely say, hey, James Gunn, Suda51, we know you're not going to be involved in this. We know you're busy. We just want you to say this sounds awesome, and that we want to honor you and credit you appropriately and say you really worked on these, you really were important to the development of these games, and that you've left a legacy of employees who can handle it now because you are such good mentors. That's the general theme you would want to put out. But just as this announcement is happening for both Suda51 and James Gunn to say we were not contacted at all is ridiculous. This kind of oddly parallels in an opposite direction what EA is doing with the American McGee Alice series. Like, they are bending, EA is probably more than likely bending over backwards to keep American McGee happy and involved with the project and saying nice things about the project, because I think the fandom of the American McGee Alice series would definitely not play a third Alice game if American McGee his name was not on it and he didn't seem like he was involved. I honestly don't believe he will be that involved. Meanwhile, his company Spicy Horse, if they're not in major trouble, which they might be, we still haven't had any update really as far as why their games are still delisted from Steam except for Alice Madness Returns. But yeah, they already have projects to do a Wizard of Oz game and just get away from Alice, and they should have done that a long time ago because EA has just sat on the Alice IP for far too long. And even though now there is something that is in pre-production, it is still not really going anywhere very fast. So it definitely gives the feeling, and I hope it's not the case, that Yoshida here may ruin the fun around Lollipop Chainsaw coming back just by being too egotistical, too much of a jerk, not enough of a team player for what you would want it to be, not willing to just show respect to people even if they don't really deserve it, which is very much a Japanese way of doing things, is that you should just, the Japanese way is to show respect even if they don't deserve it. And if anything, it feels like game developers, it's nice to see Japanese game developers growing a backbone, but it also seems like some of them may have just grown too big of an ego at the same time. But far too early to be hearing even slight controversies around the game that really is just going to needed to get a remake and come out and be amazing. There's a lot of indication here that this may just be a cash grab on their part, and it may run terribly and not be a good port. And we are far past the point where you can make a bad port of any game. If you're going to put out a game, it has to be a good port. And we're starting to see slightly more bad ports, and I hope that's not a trend that continues. Moving on. Video Games Critical says Gran Turismo 7's latest update fixes a cloud save issue. Check that article out if you're interested. An Xbox livestream may have accidentally confirmed a She-Hulk from Marvel Avengers. I don't think that many people are playing Marvel Avengers, so who cares? And almost certainly the She-Hulk that would come to Marvel Avengers would be much more in the Marvel Cinematic Universe style, not the comic book She-Hulk style. She's going to barely have a green tint, I would assume, and barely be muscular as a character when She-Hulk gets her Disney Plus TV series, which is what I think she's getting. A new Horizon Forbidden West update has added VRR and 120 Hz mode. A new balanced 40 Hz graphics mode has also been added. I thought they already had these, so it must It must have been an announcement for a different game. Um, if anything, this really feels like this is a case where the favorite companies that are developers as either almost first party or actually first party developers for Sony seem to be pushing more towards a standardization around having VRR and that's one too many R's and 120 hertz modes, variable refresh rates, may very much just be required and standard or built in to a next generation of consoles. And the 120 hertz mode is a nice feature, but it is also one of those features that you're not going to really be able to take advantage of unless you have a 120 hertz, probably Sony TV or monitor to plug it into. Most TVs, even in gaming mode, really only built so that they can get up to 60 frames per second, and that's it. Getting to double that means you're going to have a very expensive monitor, and frankly, if you have a very expensive monitor, why aren't you just then playing on a very expensive computer that could go up to 144 hertz instead of 120? The whole concept feels like they're just trying to get feature creep as a standard instead of really adding features that most people could enjoy or that most people would even notice. I suppose Horizon Forbidden West as a game is just Horizon Forbidden West. So if people liked it, I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it except for mainstream video game journalists for the first couple of weeks that it was out. So it does just kind of feel like it's the game that I would play after playing the first Horizon Forbidden West, but that there isn't anything particularly special there or different. Just feels like it's a middle of the road. And I guess if they make a third game and make it into a trilogy, the hope would be that it would be a good trilogy and end on a good note, and then people would kind of forget about the middle part. Let's go ahead and take this out of the graveyard. Almost dropped my mouse in the floor there. God of War Ragnarok gets a November release date and a new CG trailer. So seems like if they could announce a release date today, why didn't they announce a release date 2 or 3 weeks ago where people were super hyped about it? I think what it comes down to is that publishers, and that CG trailer looks fine, but doesn't look particularly amazing, even as a CG trailer, which is probably good. They're probably establishing some less hyped expectations. But yeah, publishers at this point should probably just have a sliding scale of release dates. That they should just announce a game coming out originally like 3 years in the future, and then if the hype gets bigger and bolder, they just push it further and further back. No, that's not exactly what I was thinking. What you do is you would announce the game, and then you would have a chart, and then you would have some kind of level of hype that you could measure. And once the level of hype hits to a certain point where the fan base is just ravenous, you have what you think the real release date is, and then you put in a buffer. And once the level of hype hits that point, that's when you put out that release date. So, in this case, they said it was coming out in like November. I think. So, since the level of hype was fairly ravenous, let's say a year ago, then they should have just announced that it was coming out 2 years from a year ago, which would give you a year buffer. And then if the game comes out early, you just go, surprise, we're done with the game early, so let's move the release date up to the final release date. And you don't want to move the release date back, and you don't want to move it a bunch of times, but it would be fairly easy to have a fake lie release date that is just far in the future to establish some boundaries for gamers, and then surprise them after a while. Like, we've never really had a situation, as far as gamers, being told that there's going to be a new game in 5 years and then people being upset that it's that long. That has just never happened. The release dates have always been very short, and often too short and often too wrong. Yeah. So, let's see, what's a game that recently came out? Well, let's go with Halo. If Halo Infinite 2, whatever that really would be called, was announced at all, and Halo Infinite itself was a finished product, Microsoft could easily say it's coming out in 5 years, and then get it out in 4. Or maybe they even say it's coming out in 10 years, and then get it out in 5. I don't think too many people would be... Well, we just haven't seen how many people would be upset by that. But yeah, there probably is a benefit to put a date on it, even if the date is way in the future. As long as it's far enough in the future you aren't pushing it back. Skull and Bones would still have the same problem, where if Skull and Bones was announced, it would have been past whatever date it was announced on. But instead, you have situations like this where Square Enix is delaying Forspoken again, this time to 2023. Was supposed to come out in October, most recently. In that, this is the very Japanese style of doing things, is to announce something and then change the date and delay the release over and over again. And if we're having a story earlier about how Square Enix sucks and mistreated the Balan Wonderworld release, you almost have to assume the same is going to happen for Forspoken, so there's no reason to get hyped around it at all. Square Enix is just poison as a publisher. Here we have a different kind of story. Microsoft's Activision acquisition is being investigated by the UK's competition watchdog. The probe will consider whether the deal could harm competition, is a quote here, which of course it would. That's what the probe would consider, and of course it will harm competition to some small amount. The question, I guess, though, is how much authority or approval does the UK really have? Because worst case scenario, this could get approved by the United States, and then some office in the UK may have to be spun off as its own individual company. But that is certainly the question as to which Activision office or Activision Blizzard or King office is in the UK. Is it just King, the makers of Candy Crush? Oh darn, if Microsoft gets Overwatch and Diablo and Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and StarCraft, but can't get Candy Crush. But if it was like Blizzard, actually has its main offices in the UK. But I imagine there's probably a decent number of tricks and things you can do that would let you transfer over the rights of a company. Like, I would assume that Diablo as an intellectual property is owned in the United States. On top of that, it also doesn't sound like the UK government's got really the time to focus on a probe like that. They could certainly have different departments doing different things, but I just did see that Boris Johnson, their prime minister, has had a lot of people in his party resign more than ever before, which I would think from an outsider looking in may very well lead to a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson, forcing him out, or the Queen even forcing him out, which that can happen, I think. I'm frankly a little surprised that the Queen doesn't just declare war on Russia before she dies. That would be a great way to get all the United Kingdom involved with the Ukraine, and then also not blame the replacement monarch that would take over. That's basically what George Bush did with Iraq, is he got the United States into Iraq, and then several other presidents had to deal with it. He's just gonna start every single spell. Start with that one. Go ahead and activate this so we draw cards. Of course, that has nothing to do with video games. A special edition Splatoon 3 Switch OLED console has been revealed. It doesn't seem like there'll be anything different there. Just different skins on the same hardware. It would be very surprising if there was hardware differences for the Nintendo Switch OLED editions ever. We're just slowly going to have to wait until a Switch 2 could source the chips and Nintendo could gets around to actually sourcing the chips. Right. To making new Switch 2 or a new console of any sort. This effect detaches this and then lets you summon this, and then I can also activate this and put this here, which does tell me I could have played this slightly differently. This one should have been the first, I think. Yeah, it should be 3, then 4, then 1, then 2. And then last translation is here. Our last special summon is that one, which we know to do that part. See, that gets you halfway through. No, it doesn't do any damage this turn, but it gets you into a nice little starting point. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles, we have a couple more articles. Ubisoft has announced The Division Resurgent for mobile. It's an open-world third-person shooter for iOS and Android. Yeah, I, on a whim, looked at the books that they are using to teach out of in the United States high schools, basically. It's whatever Texas basically decides to order, because Texas orders so many books and they have this giant book repository, which is, I believe that is where the Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK, was the book repository. But yeah, they order so many books that whatever gets approved by Texas then is whatever gets printed, and it's whatever every other state tends to teach out of. And so I was looking at their computer science books that they were teaching out of, as far as what languages they were teaching in high school. And there is a slight variation there where there's some uncertainty, because since there's been a decent amount of de-emphasis of actually teaching that in a proper class, and instead pushing people to doing STEAM projects or programs where they go to some other facility and learn something that is not quite on the same approved list. So you might learn something different at different ages because of a STEAM program, but that will widely vary from school to school and have no consistency. But in general, it seems like they are pushing Java, which Java is dead. Java's been dead for like 5 years, so teaching Java is insane. It might make some sense to teach Kotlin if you're having a class specifically focused around oops, that was not what I wanted to do. Yeah, if you were teaching a class specifically around making Android apps, but I think in high school, making Android apps or learning Kotlin, which is the replacement for Java and probably fairly similar to Java, I don't think that quite makes enough sense, particularly when you're not teaching something like JavaScript and you're not teaching HTML5, because I didn't see any books around that. Maybe I just overlooked them, I don't know. But also, if you were going to teach Java because you're making Android programs, then you're not teaching the other language to make iOS programs, and it would make more sense to teach both or teach neither, as far as just iOS apps. And then the other language they're teaching is C#, which I can't really agree with that. It really should just be C++ still. C++ has been around forever, and it is multi-platform focused, where C# is very much Windows focused, and I don't even really know how Windows focused that is, when Windows and Microsoft are also pushing universal Windows platform programs. Microsoft has been kind of all over the place. As far as I can tell, C# is more library heavy, so the executables are bigger. It's slower than C++, but either one of those might not really matter too much. It's just the fact that you're in C. If you learn C++, you can make Windows programs and Linux programs. Maybe BSD still uses C, but I don't think so. It's way more multi-platform. If you're going to make any kind of server-side program or Linux program, it would make a lot more sense to learn C++. And there are different versions of C++, so what I was taught as far as C++ when I was in school probably isn't the same version you should be teaching. Uh, um, and at a certain point, I don't even agree with C++'s focus around object-oriented programming and classes. I think both of those concepts are somewhat uh, somewhat useless in a lot of instances, particularly in the teaching instances. So all of that is to really ramble and say nothing other than I'm now one step closer to thinking about writing my own educational book around, I assume C++ is what I would write it around. It's surprising they don't teach Python at some point, and that they don't teach Scratch at some point, but it didn't seem like that was the case. It would make some sense to be teaching Scratch in every elementary school, and there definitely needs to be a better emphasis on how programming is very similar to math and has many parallels to math and algebra and geometry, and there's, I don't think, enough emphasis there for sure. I definitely came out of programming classes and never for a second thought, oh, math is very much a parallel science to computer science, and that the two should both be learned, and you should be very good at math to also be good at computer programming. Otherwise, you're going to make programs that are doing calculations very simplistically and very poorly. Of course, if I did write an educational book, it would never get approved. It would never sell. I would have to cajole and trick the publishers into publishing the publishers that make the textbooks now, the school books now. I'd have to trick them into publishing my book. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I just put it on Amazon, like direct demand printing, or as an e-book. Plenty of people do that. I'm not even sure it would be worth the effort to get a copyright like protection. Spend the $500 or so to get an ISBN and get the beginnings of a file of a copyright. And there's so many scam services out there that say they'll do that for you, but I'm sure those are mostly scam services. Of course, I don't really have time for any of that. I'm still falling incredibly behind as far as making pre-recorded footage and scheduling videos. Back to video game news. The Matrix Awakens demo will be delisted this week. Players have until July 9th to download the Unreal Engine tech demo on the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. This is very much like PT. I don't know why you would take it off, though, considering The Matrix Awakens did come out as a movie, and it seems stupid that you wouldn't have better licensed your tech demo so that it could be always listed and should always be listed. It's like they intentionally here have chosen to not learn the lessons of PT. At least PT getting delisted makes sense because that game is never actually coming out, but the Matrix Awakens movie did come out. It didn't sell a ton of tickets, or it didn't make very many movie critics happy, so maybe this is just a effort to rewrite history. That's almost certainly it. This is interesting. The Wii Shop channel and the DSi shop are back online after 4 months. They've been undergoing, quote, maintenance since March. Hmm. That's funny because I would have just pretty much assumed that they were going to be taken down forever. But maybe this is a case where Nintendo was still getting some money from it, or Nintendo was able to shift several servers down to one cheap server enough that it was worth it to just keep the servers online. I think very often that is the case where if you just scaled down to one server for legacy reasons, you very much still have a chance of not irritating your audience. Let's see. The thing though is they're saying here that they plan to cease digital game purchases on the Wii U and 3DS, which is the generations after the Wii Shop and DSi, in March of 2023. You'll no longer be able to make purchases or download free content, including game demos, according to Nintendo. After March 23 and for the foreseeable future, it will still be possible to re-download games and DLC, recent software updates, receive software updates, and play online on the Wii U and 3DS. Up to 1,000 digital-only games will no longer be available for purchase once the marketplace closes. New purchases for the Wii Shop channel was stopped in 2019. Anyways, so if anything, this is oddly a example of Nintendo actually supporting their old consoles. Specifically the Wii, though. There was just so many people, so many old people that got Wiis and are going to call and complain that they can't like update their software if they get a new Wii. Moving on, this should probably be the last game I play, because I'm just now getting done with Video Games Chronicles and we're at the Gamatsu articles. Anonymous Code is coming to the West in 2023 for the PS4, Switch, and PC, notably not the PS5. Let's see. Card Fight Vanguard Dear Days launches November 17th. Card Fight Vanguard, I think, is a series of collectible card games that's actually fairly popular in Japan, based off of actual collectible cards they sell in Japan. I don't think they've made a lot of headway in the West, though. Gmode Archives Plus Megami Tensei Gaiden Shinyaku Last Bible launches July 14th in Japan. This is one of the older Shin Megami Tensei games, and if it's Gmode Plus, then it's a spin-off cell phone game. Although it doesn't really look much different from the general concepts of what Shin Megami Tensei games are. I mispronounced that name quite a bit. I probably mispronounced quite a bit. Alright, we summon this. Interesting. That is perfect for him to counter that, because that's not something I was going to do anyways. And since I didn't do that, then that makes the order here a little less important. I shouldn't be able to activate this. He's drawing a card every time I do this. I don't know why. It does seem odd, like Maxi. What is it? What is Maxi? This turn, each time your opponent summons a monster, immediately draw a card. Interesting. So that is a different way potentially to use Maxi that I hadn't thought about. Just go ahead and end the turn. Let's see. Kimetsu has the weekly Japanese game releases, being Clona Fantasy Reverie series and My Girlfriend is a Mermaid Refined for PS4 and more. I guess this is My Girlfriend is a Mermaid. And this is Clona. Matchpoint Tennis Champions also, and MX versus ATV Legends also. Although these articles I probably shouldn't bother to spend too much time on. One Piece Odyssey has 18 minutes of gameplay. I feel like I watched some of this, and it looks fine. Like, looks like there's a game here. It's gonna really come down to how big the island is and how many different characters there are, and just how much of an experience you're really gonna get from it. It could be a 5-hour open world island RPG. It could be a 50-hour open world RPG, and you just won't know. Let's see. Alice Gear Aegis CS Concerto of Simulacrax has a story trailer, and 3 of the characters being shown off. Yeah. This is a pretty detail-lacking animation style. You can see in the hair there's just like one blob of a shade here and some slight shading on the edges. One blob of a shade here. One blob of a shade here. In the face there's very little detail. Yeah, if you were to make Lollipop Chainsaw look like this, that would be ridiculous, and that would not be more realistic than what it started as. Yep, this game visually is just always come off as not quite polished enough to catch my interest. Alright, let's see if we cancel him banishing my entire hand, because that would be a nightmare. And then we'll play this. Destroy all attack position monsters. He had all those cards and none of them helped him. Do we have enough here to do this? Yes, we do. I don't know why I keep putting this in the middle. I should put this one over to the side. That would make more sense. Put it over here or put it in the far corner. Then bring the other character over here for the link summons. This is gonna potentially just have him give up. And then we'll set this card as a potential trap. Just to see if that's a slightly better strategy. I don't know if setting a quick play card is a better strategy, but it probably isn't. Which on the Holy Night for PS4 and Switch is coming to the West on December 8th. Which I don't know what kind of game this is. It's a visual novel. We definitely are getting more hints towards visual novels. And yeah, this looks kind of a little bit soft, a little bit old school in the animation style. There might be a good story here. This might be a port of an older game. The game Inscription has been rated for the PS4 in Australia, which I don't think Inscription is a PC only game. Yeah, it launched for PC via Steam, Epic Games Store, Good Old Games, and Humble Store. A console version is yet to be announced. It is a PC only game. It's not Steam exclusive, but it is not for consoles, which probably is fairly easy to port it over to consoles. But oddly, only PS4 seems to be like an odd choice also. But yeah, that does seem like that is the beginning of a hint of something. Just add that back. This is probably the best card to always draw. Let's see. Made in Abyss, binary star falling into darkness. Details deep in abyss mode. Which, okay. The Made in Abyss series has a odd art style that is also very kind of featureless in this game. It has more features in the actual anime than that. It is also an incredibly dark story in the anime, despite its art style. If anything, there is an argument that they went with a cutesy animation style so that it didn't overwhelm the viewer with all the horrific violence and cruelty that happens in the story. Although on the other hand, if you were to make Schindler's List with a bunch of hand puppets and make that same argument, people would laugh at you and call that pretty dumb. But that is something that they have said before, fans have said, is that they would have been exhausted if it was hyper realistic. And I could see that, certainly. Like, if you watch something like Berserk's gritty, realistic art style can be somewhat extreme. It's fairly extreme. And maybe if it had been slightly more cartoony, it would have been easier to digest. Although at a certain point, what is the part that you're trying to convey? Because you're fighting yourself. Frankly, if you wanted the audience to be angry at a person, you would show a bad guy kicking a dog. That is the opposite of saving a cat in movie, TV writing. You wouldn't cut away from the bad guy kicking a dog, or just imply that he kicked a dog because you felt the audience couldn't handle it. I don't feel like fans need to be that mollycoddled. Yeah. Suffice to say, though, there's a lot of screenshots here of what Made in Abyss looks like, and it honestly feels like it is way too much of a survival game, even though that is the theme. It feels too much like a Minecraft game. Minecraft but children dying horribly is an odd combination. But we've basically seen every other combination as far as Minecraft, so I half wouldn't be surprised if that's where they were thinking. Ray-Z's Arcade Chronology launches March 9th in Japan. This is obviously a shoot 'em up game, it looks like. I've never heard of him. Heard of Ray-Z before. So it may have never come to the West, or it could have come to the West under a different name. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of games came to the West under different names. Okay. Let's do this. And then destroy this. And then destroy this. Activate this. Which then can put that in the graveyard. Activate this. Which means we can put that in our hand. Yeah, unless he can pull something off to do another 3,000 though. I probably won here. Yeah. I think there's enough cards there to win. The Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak expansion shipments of digital sales top 2 million, where the base game tops 10 million. We already talked about that. Lollipop Chainsaw remake being announced. We already talked about that. Even in the world here, you can see here is a probably student going to the same school that was turned into a zombie in this world, and you can see how Juliet in her cheerleader outfit is still way more extreme. Although there is a picture showing her entire cheerleading team and they all are wearing the same outfit, so it is a farcical world to some point. Although I also wouldn't be surprised if there is a school somewhere in the United States where they have the teenagers showing a lot more skin in the outfits than you would think they would allow, because every little school, every high school, middle school, elementary becomes this weird kingdom ruled by a school district at best, or ruled by a principal. So anything and everything could happen, and parents often don't know what's going on, or don't question it, or don't have any power to stop things that they think are inappropriate. And then often parents get obsessed about other things, or trying to make changes somewhere else, or come off as like they're crazy when they really do have legitimate grievances. Alright, let's do this. Can we win the day here? Again, I should have put this over here in this corner. Activate this effect. Tossing that. Go ahead and correct the mistake here. activate this effect. This time we can only get 2 cards out of the graveyard. Which, let's see, guess best case scenario, you do something like that. And then special summon that. Yeah, I think that works. Let's just attack. Well, that sucks. I don't think I have quite anything to save the day from that. Like, I can kill this. And so what else can we do? Yeah, the hope would be to do this. Let's guess get rid of that. Well, I might win here still, but I don't have a lot of confidence. Moving on, Gamatsu says Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days has a debut trailer. Here we can see a card management screen of it. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed has a co-op trailer, which you can check out on Gamatsu if you want to check that out. Xbox Game Pass adding a bunch of games, which we'd already really covered. Peppa Pig, notably for kids. Escape Academy, I think, is pretty much brand new game too. Let's see. Should have probably activated that. I think Road 96 is a fairly new game too. We haven't had too many stories around how Microsoft is just pushing the new games. Alright, let's activate this. Yeah, Microsoft has been pushing the idea of just you're going to get a new game with Xbox Game Pass, and we don't really care about game sales that much anymore. They'd rather have a Netflix-style subscription consistent income than trying to constantly advertise and sell games. So the only real question here is, with the exception of playing solo mode, did we miss out on any daily quest? And I think the answer is no. Did we get up in the rank today? No. It's going to be matters of luck or just matters of being um, very persistent and actually paying attention and playing very well to get up, hopefully back up to platinum. Like, it'd be nice to get to diamond, but if we could just consistently get up to platinum before the end of the month, that would be fine too. Alright, so moving on with news now, we'll just try and burn through the news very quickly. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has 2 DLC characters, Dispo Goku, Ultimate Ultra Instinct Sign, and Vegeta from GT, which, yeah, Goku just continuously getting powered up is kind of a ridiculous problem with the Dragon Ball universe, is that they really just cannot get away from Goku as a character, just constantly getting better and better, and then having to write even more ridiculous explanations on how he got better, and then introduce even more ridiculous bad guys that have to balance out why he needed to get stronger. A 3D survival horror game called Senses Midnight has been announced for consoles and PC, which I kind of want to see this. Doesn't need to be in full screen, though. Well, immediately you see a girl with a lot of cleavage and kind of a wild style, and immediately you see you're going to be looking at them from the background. Yeah, that 3D model feels too much like an asset flip. It doesn't feel like she's in some kind of like ninja outfit. It's more like a neon ninja outfit, which with a backpack that has some glowing eyes on the back of it. This definitely wouldn't be, just looking at this trailer, this isn't one that feels like it is a actual game that would actually be good. Like, we can hope, certainly. Like, there have been several attempts now of having the Japanese mythology and the Japanese ghosts be a game and be something that people in the West can understand and play, but I have yet to really see it work particularly well. It seems like it's just copycat efforts by a lot of game developers and low efforts at that point. You see this very first screenshot where she's taking a selfie, kind of implying that you might have something like Fatal Frame as far as a gameplay style, but I don't believe that's really the case. I think they're just trying to make you think that it looks like Fatal Frame, and if this was what a new Fatal Frame looked like, I would be very confused. It definitely feels like this is also set in some weird future, a future Japan with ghosts, which maybe that's putting a hat on a hat. Skull and Bones worldwide gameplay reveal live stream is set for July 7th if you want to check that out. Ubisoft Forward has been set for September 10th, featuring multiple games, which Ubisoft should announce some games, because otherwise I'm going to get a little concerned about their lineup for next year and this year. Valkyrie Elysium launches September 29th for the PS5 and PS4 and November 11th for PC. I assume that this is a JRPG game. This one is zoomed in a little bit better, so I could almost see maybe thinking about playing one of these games. This feels more like a 16-bit animation style than an 8-bit animation style. That being said, it's almost certainly still going to be a pass for me. It even looks like there might be some platforming elements to the game, but that's not going to be enough. And then you look at like this story screenshot and what the actual game looks like, and it is a night and day difference, or even in the concept art, it's a night and day difference. And oddly, there's a completely different game they're showing screenshots for. So what was I looking at before? There should be some games out there involving Valkyries, if this actually does involve Valkyries, but um, I don't know if a Japanese game with Valkyries is quite what I'm looking for. I'm very confused now. What were the screenshots? Either they messed up this article or they showed me screenshots of a different Valkyrie profile game. What in the world was I just looking at? The PS5, PS4 versions of Valkyrie Profile Lilith are ported from the PSP and include new features. Valkyrie Elysium is a different game. Huh. Well, that was really bad of Gamatsu to do that. That's confusing as somebody who's not paying attention skims down, and I am one of those people that skims down. This definitely looks like a more modern 3D game, although inherently still could just be a JRPG, still could be a huge time waste, and it would be hard to say let's play Valkyrie Elysium when I could be playing Final Fantasy. It's being published by apparently in part Square Enix and Tencent and Wake Up Entertainment. So yeah, that does just feel like that would be a lot of compromises to justify playing this game when there are other games. In particular, Nier Automata comes to mind as a game I haven't gotten around to playing. I definitely want to play that before. A game called Pascal's Wager Definitive Edition is coming to the Switch on July 4th. It's a action RPG that's currently on PC. I've never heard of it. It looks kind of dark. Looks like it's trying to be maybe a slightly faster paced Bloodborne, Dark Souls type game. Pascal's Wager is not a terrible name for this type of game, so I'll applaud him for that. The Tokyo Game Show 2022 key visual has been unveiled, which I assume key visual in this case means what they're going to just show off on the ticket or as a poster. This may give some small insight into what consoles the Japanese are interested in. Notably, in previous years, they started to get further and further away from PlayStations. So you see here, there's somebody playing something that looks very much like a Nintendo Switch. You see here, definitely a computer. You see here, a computer. You're seeing a controller here that doesn't really look like a PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, as it is. She's got a controller here on her bottom of her feet. Designs. Types of games might be implied in the edges here. But yeah. It doesn't really feel like there's much of an endorsement for an Xbox. We don't really see an Xbox anywhere here unless this is supposed to be an Xbox. Which, okay, maybe that's supposed to be an Xbox. But that could easily just be a computer or a speaker. Like, these could be all kinds of different things. You're not seeing anything that looks like the curvy nature of the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation 4. So yeah, that definitely implies to me that there's a lack of enthusiasm, at least in the part of this artist, to have anything Sony there. And it'll be interesting to see how many things are announced for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 when we actually get to the Tokyo Game Show, which is September 15th through the 18th, if I'm reading that correctly. A kinetic visual novel called Harmonia is coming to the Switch this fall in Japan. It was first released in PC in September of 2016, on PC in September of 2016. Being a kinetic visual novel, that means there are no branching paths, and it is just a story going forward, which arguably, if the story's good, it being kinetic shouldn't be a problem, but it, for a lot of players, will not have any interactivity and thus not really feel like a video game. The Valiant Companions trailer is available on Gamatsu if you want to check that out. I've not heard of this game. I feel like it could have been announced and I could have just zoned it out. Yeah. Looks like it's maybe a top-down resource management or a top-down real-time strategy game through the blur. Frog Gun launches August 2nd. Explore mysterious ruins with the help of your frog gun. Very pixely, intentionally, obviously. At least they're going to say it's intentionally. Looks like it's trying to be a 3D platformer slash top-down twin-stick shooter game. And maybe we should just have more games where you have a gun that is a frog instead of a gun that is just a gun, to try and make them more kid-friendly. Splatoon certainly succeeds that way because having paintball guns is way more digestible for parents than having real guns and having kids actually shooting each other. Biomutant is coming to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series on September 6th, according to Gamatsu. God of War Ragnarok launches November 9th. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually gets delayed. The Switch OLED Splatoon 3 Special Edition has been announced. We covered that. Forspoken being delayed to January 24th, 2023. We didn't get the full date as far as where that was pushed back. Sword and Fairy Together Forever for the PS5 and PS4 combat trailer and screenshots are available. Which is Sword and Fairy series as kind of more of a Chinese game series that's been very popular, I think, in China. It might have more relevancy than it seems, just because it's so wildly popular in China. And at a certain level, I would gladly trade remasters and ports of the entire Sword and Fairy series, if those games are good, instead of the terrible low-effort Chinese games that we see on Steam come out on a near-daily basis. Of course, it's going to get very boring very fast if every Chinese game is based on ancient Chinese mythology and looks exactly the same and feels exactly the same. We already talked about Tom Clancy's The Division Resurgence being announced for iOS and Android. And then Bright Memory Infinite for the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch launches July 21st. It's currently available on PC. Is it out of early access on PC? Or is Bright Memory Infinite a spin-off of Bright Memory that's still in early access? And will Bright Memory itself just never come out of early access? That's a question to ask, certainly. Yeah. Right now, Bright Memory Infinite is out of early access. I wonder when that really happened. I may just be very confused as to how that broke down, and it does seem like when Bright Memory Infinite came out, Bright Memory as its own game was done at that point. Also seems like there's a whole bunch of outfits and DLC around this. Are we still having the summer sale? Yep. The summer sale is still going on. I'm paying very, very little attention to it. Also, definitely, since I'm not signed in, it's going to be hard to put things on the fall list. Let's see. Let's look at Bright Memory. Yeah, Bright Memory 2 is not considered early access anymore. Of course, that does also confuse as far as which if not both games do you need to play, or do you need to play Bright Memory then Bright Memory Infinite. By default, it would seem like you need to play Bright Memory then Bright Memory Infinite. Let's see. I'll go ahead and just sign in, otherwise this is going to not work particularly well. I kind of wish all passwords go away, but the two-factor authentication for Steam, because it signs you out so often, is kind of a nightmare, where it isn't really that much of a nightmare anywhere else. Like, usually I'm more than happy to sign in with two-factor authentication, because that reminds me I have decent security, but yeah, it happens too often. So Bright Memory was already on the wish list, and Bright Memory Infinite was already on the wish list. Okay, we have a game here called Dash and Slash. These are the games that came out, and we'll see if any of them are quite worth it. I don't think the graphics here are polished enough for this idea. I've seen better versions of this concept of a puzzle platforming experience. Phone Seller Simulator looks like garbage, so we can say no to that. Cyber Drift looks like just another one of these Outrun clones, so we'll say no to that. I'll have to reload any game I actually do want to put on the fall list, but that's not that big of a deal. Tank Commander Battlefield is no. We may also just say no to everything, so then I just need to close the tabs. Nuclear Fighter is no. One Last Crane from Sekai Project. Looks like a romance visual novel. Do we have any adult content here? English and Chinese? Nope. No indication, no tags or anything like it's got any adult content on it, so it's going to be a fairly tame visual novel. But for a Chinese visual novel, it doesn't look terrible in the animation style. There is a actual character in every screenshot, which you'll be surprised how many games can't even pull that off as far as Chinese visual novels. But yep, I'll say no to that. Last Call BBS. Seems to be a collection of different mini games. That seems like it's a jack of all trades, master of none concept. And then you get to like this. I guess there was just some kind of BBS minigame or a minigame here from putting together a model kit. I couldn't even really tell you what this is supposed to be. Yeah, I think you just say no to this though. This collection of minigames. It is rated very positively, so we'll See if refreshing with F5 works. I don't think F5 would be stuck on anything else. We'll put that on the follow list. Yeah, I am just having to now use my keyboard when I start looking at these games because of the problem of everything being opened in a new tab. This is a Chinese game mobile port that doesn't support English, so we can say no to that. And I really haven't even spent any energy trying to fix that because I don't think that there's going to be the easiest of fixes. And as soon as this next plugin I installed doesn't work, I'll just have to try to find a different plugin. I need to figure out a way to get my macro to stop being reliant on plugins, but I don't know if there really is a way to do it. It's just not powerful enough. It doesn't seem to have the functions that I would need, or it's hiding the functions behind something I don't want to use or can't use. Where are my potatoes? Looks different, but I don't think particularly polished enough to interest me. We don't have a ton of games today, so we'll be through this fairly quickly. Under the Stars. This is another Chinese game. This one says it supports English. I would question how well it would support English. And see, this also might help me a little bit because I was a little bit ahead as far as the PC daily PC game shorts. I didn't actually record and upload the videos from Monday, also 4th of July. Stopped me from doing that. So now if I could find better games, since I'm ahead, I could drop some of the games I was thinking about from Monday. But at this rate, it seems like I'm not going to find better games, and instead I will stick with what I chose before. This oddly seems like these are photographs in part that have been drawn over. Just a lot of people here. A lot of people for a hidden object game. Turbo Light Rush. Is this possibly a good enough game to interest me or anyone? No, I don't think it quite is. Yeah, arguably there will be some types of games. This is just a Sokoban box pushing game. That there will be some kinds of games that won't interest me, but are relevant enough to put on the YouTube Shorts. I'm not really coming from it from a perspective of curating my preferences into the games I pick. I'm just curating a level of quality. But also, I've mostly ignored multiplayer games, so that's something else to think about. This game Trash is Fun might be one to keep, but I don't think I want to put it on the follow list. Fire Truck Simulator, as crazy as it is, I'll put that on the fall list just because I haven't seen another fire truck simulator out there. Space Captain McLaren looks terrible. Brick Breaker game, nothing there. Inexperienced driver, I don't think anything's there. I bet that game plays and controls terribly. Quarina doesn't look like anything. Steam Motion. Yep. There was an Italian awards event that happened yesterday, but I don't think I'm going to have an article with the winners. And if this was the first year of the Italian awards, that wouldn't surprise me because I've never heard of an Italian Game Awards, nor do I think there's enough game developers in Italy to make them have any level of prestige. Like you would expect Game Awards events need to take place in places where there's at least 4 or 5 different publishers of games or developers of games. I'm going to put this on the follow list just in case it's good. I don't think it will be. Yeah. There's all kinds of award shows everywhere, and they all tend to give the same awards to the same games. These visuals are wild and different, but the actual gameplay still just looks like a dungeon crawler RPG. Village Guardians. Yeah, I'm not sure what I decided as far as VR games either. Whether I want to highlight VR games. I probably don't. But I'll put that on the follow list. Let's see, we only have like 3 more games, and this is very much kind of no good options. Aliens and Ghost here looks like it might be somewhat visually polished. Yeah. It definitely feels like there's just a lack of good games today, which is understandable and believable. Alright, so we'll leave it at that. We already talked about the Amico trademark being abandoned from GameDeveloper.com. We already talked about Red Dead Redemption Remaster being cancelled, reportedly. We already talked about Lollipop Chainsaw's developers, quote unquote, depending on who you count in that group, forming a new studio to remake the game. If anything, I heavily suspect it's a case where they formed a new studio on the premise and promise of remaking the game, and they have a whole bunch of ideas, and they really haven't locked anything in or settled on anything. I wouldn't be surprised if some Lollipop Chainsaw type game comes out and it is very different from what they're talking about. There's an obituary here. The producer for Hell Let Loose, James Light, has passed away. Quote, he was always the first to champion the efforts of others and bring praise to a team as a whole. Now, the game Hell Let Loose, I don't really remember. But yeah, it definitely seems like it is. It is a case where more and more people are just dying for one reason or another. Let's see. He joined the Hell Let Loose's publisher Team 17's QA department at the beginning of his career. Quickly rose through the ranks, eventually becoming a producer on the project. He is described as someone who possessed incredible work ethic, humility, and enduring kindness. One of these was not like the other. Despite being extremely effective, he was always the first to champion the work and efforts of others and bring praise to his team as a whole. His achievement, though quiet, saw him develop into the role of producer assistant, and then several months ago receive a final promotion to the position of producer, formalizing his role and overseeing the entire PC development side of Hell Let Loose. I almost wonder if he had like cancer or something and they knew he was dying, so they promoted him just out of pity. Although that's an interesting idea too. If you're at a job and they somewhat like you and you were unethical, lie about having cancer and dying in the next 12 months see if they'll give you a promotion or time off or something. This is a really nice obituary compared to a lot of other obituaries, and this guy must be a really nice guy compared to most other game people, because most game people don't have people saying nice things at all. It's usually the family and friends that say some nice things, not coworkers, and it's usually very little that's said. But this is going on. He had more knowledge of the game than perhaps anyone else, certainly more than me, having reported and studied thousands of bugs, knowing every intricacy and nuance across every aspect of the game. Team said Light made an indelible impression on the game, before adding, also made that same impression on us. So they really, really liked that guy. If only every obituary can be that nice and for everyone. Apparently, a speedrunner was banned from the Games Done Quick over a fake Metal Gear Rising world record. Quote, "This is absolutely unacceptable and attempts to undermine the integrity of the speedrunning community." So, did he fake it on stage? I bet. The organizers behind the charity event have banned the participant who faked a record-breaking Metal Gear Rising Revengeance DLC run. Russian player Mekarazium appeared to have set the world record after blitzing through the title's Blade Wolf DLC during the latest edition of Summit Games Done Quick, but later admitted they used a pre-recorded video of the game as opposed to playing in real time. Wow, I'm surprised you could get away with that at a live event. Was this a live event, or perhaps it was half live and half pre-record, half streaming and not pre-recorded? Undoubtedly there's just a lot of cheating in every sport, and I think gamers have lived under a fantasy that there hasn't been a lot of cheating. And in a lot of cases, since a lot of people just play single player, cheating only hurts the person who's playing. But when you're starting to submit speedruns or claim that you're actually doing something when you aren't, that's crossing a line. Sony's Santa Monica studio confirms Ragnarok. We already talked about that, launching this year. Activision Blizzard employees to walk out again on July 21st. Activision workers are demanding protections from threats, both external and allegedly internally. What are these threats? Because there's a whole wide range of what the threats could be. They could be threats by union busting people, lawyers and Pinkertons type people. They could be threats from gamers. They could be threats from random trolls on the internet. They could be threats from your boss or other employees. It's also apparently going to be in response to the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which that's not really the best way to address that, in my opinion. Like, Roe versus Wade is not Activision Blizzard's fault, even if unless you're making a very wide argument that the management, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, funded the people who overturned Roe versus Wade, which he very well may have. So at that point, you might do a walkout to punish Activision Blizzard because of the politics that they are passively endorsing based on paying and continuing to employ the CEO. But in general, if it is just a case that Roe versus Wade was overturned and they want to do a walkout, then you would try to coordinate that with everybody and try to get everybody on board, the management and the associate level employees. Or if there was like a nationwide strike in general, a day without women type thing, or a week without women, and that was happening on July 21st, that would kind of make some sense too. I don't know if there is something like that, but there should be something like that. There have been things like that in the past, certainly, where congressmen and senators' wives refused to sleep with their husbands until they uh, pass certain like pro-feminist um, legislation. Um, if anything, it seems like third wave feminism has really pushed a lot of women out of the feminist movement, and the feminist movement probably got a little too lax in general. Hmm. Hmm. The only real quote here, as I'm scanning this article, says the company current healthcare policy does not adequately protect workers. Uh, they presently offered 4,000 reimbursements for out-of-state medical care. Currently leaves employees open to legal prosecution in their home state. Travel reimbursements do not remove workers from imminent danger. So, yeah, they're straight up saying they want Activision Blizzard to pay for lawyers to defend them if some state like Texas tries to prosecute them for leaving Texas and getting an abortion in a different state, which Texas literally passed a law so that could happen. Yeah. I don't know if that's 100% the most important topic to bring up. It is definitely a big topic, but Activision Blizzard has so many other problems. Just adding yet another demand uh, makes it even harder to negotiate. Uh, Certainly, though, I guess that's not really the workers' fault either. Uh, and then the final article we have from GameDeveloper.com here says Ubisoft unveils a mobile version of Tom Clancy's The Division. Which, does this really look like Tom Clancy to you? It really doesn't look like Tom Clancy to me. But I guess I don't really know what Tom Clancy even is today, or ever was. And then we've got some follow list cleanup here, which Sunshine Manor Prologue here from 2020 can leave the follow list. Sunshine Manor from 2021 can leave the follow list. It kind of looks a little cutesy, but I don't think I can make I don't think I can make an exception here for this game. It's from a no-name developer and publisher, pretty much, and doesn't look that spooky or scary. 100% positive. At a certain level, I guess it's getting down to a point where I am going to probably just going to leave some games off the wish list, off the follow list, and then I'll just have to build a new wish list or follow list. Unless this Camp Sunshine, which is rated very positively, because Sunshine Manor is a prequel to Camp Sunshine. So if this was on the wish list, then I could see getting Sunshine Manor on the wish list. But looking at it, it looks like it's suffering from dark screenshot syndrome and just looks like an RPG Maker horror game. So then that literally just sends me back to this point to remove this from the follow list. So decision made. Sunset Shapes. This is a game that I wish would have had more relevancy, but it doesn't. I think I'll leave this one on the follow list though, because I want to find a different variation on this. You move the pieces and then use the shadows to make the images, or you use the shadows on the different faces to make the 3D element. I'm still looking for a game that really focuses on that idea of multiple faces and a 3D Picross type experience. Sunline here looks nice, but is mixed, so much for that. That goes off the follow list. Sunlight, on the other hand, is rated very positively as a walking simulator. I guess that goes to the wish list. Even though it is a walking simulator. Sunday Rivals as a football game is rated very positively. So that can go to the wish list. Like, I have definitely been looking for one American football game to potentially try. And that can be the one. Sun Blaze. Looks like it's a precision platforming game that I might take a gamble on. I really would like to see it play. No, I think this probably is going to just run into the same situation that any other precision platformer has, where it's just going to be too difficult for me specifically to play. It does feel like it's a kind of weird story they're telling, where you're this girl beating a simulator and the thumbnail has an explosion behind her and her midriff, I think, being exposed there. I think that's the implication there. So she's like in workout gear or yoga gear, it looks like. Yeah, but for the actual gameplay, this has to go. This is one of those cases where the nice animation on the thumbnail is keeping me more interested than I should be. See, next we have a early access farming sim called Sun Haven that looks a little different. I don't know if I really want to get into a farming sim, but it's still in early access, so I'll give it a little bit more time before considering it again. And then here we have an age check, so you have to be logged in to see that one. Summer life in the countryside. Let me make sure all the screenshots are YouTube friendly. Yep. This is tagged as sexual content nudity. It's 73% positive, 52% more recently. Definitely feels like it's a case where some of this is going to get skimpier or be completely removed. The actual game doesn't seem like it's too much of anything, and oddly I think the character you play as is this blue orb, Um, So the question here is, if you've got an average rating of 70%, I think the quality is just a little too low. Um, I don't know how many people in the West also spend summer vacations with like childhood or family members. Maybe some do, but I don't think it's quite as common as it is in Japan, where it feels like in Japan they very often just dump off their kids on family members, and the parents take vacations themselves. But yeah, not quite good enough of a game. And that came out March 25th, 2021 as an adult game. Yeah, but yeah, not quite good enough to make it to the wish list, so we'll take it off the fall list. Summertime Madness here. Looks like it's a puzzle game that's mostly positive. Although we are being very generous when we look at things and just see mostly positive, because it really is 75% or more. Whereas if I was being a lot more picky, I would probably hold it up to it needing to be at least 80% better. 80% positive. Yeah, this one does look like an interesting experience. Not a ton of people played it too, so it might be a bit of a sleeper hit. And then we have a game here called Summer 58 that's rated very positively. That looks like a horror game, but it's rated very positively, and it was already on the fall list. So add that to the wish list. And that's all we need to do as far as the fall list cleanup. We forgot to open 10 bonus packs, so we'll do that. Let's go and skip that. Not quite as many new cards. I would have liked a couple more new cards, but whatever. We're definitely making more progress than I thought we would opening these legacy packs. As far as just getting towards owning all the cards. Very likely, most of these normal legacy pack cards, though, are not really worth anything and not playable. Alright, let me then, before we wrap up this stream, look through my Twitter feed and see if everything works. Nobody came on the chat today, which is a shame because we were getting a nice little run of people coming onto the chat. Although I look at like the average watch time and the number of views of previous live streams, and even when I have like 2 people on the chat, it's like 1 or 2 people viewed, and the amount of watch time is an hour. So I don't know if it isn't just a case that there are some people that are straight up hopping in, immediately trying to chat with me, and then fairly quickly leaving after that. And they're definitely on every YouTube video are people that just hop in on a video and leave immediately after like a second or so. So yeah, or it very well is a possibility that the calculations by YouTube are just wrong. Straight up, they're just lying and saying you're getting less views and less watch time compared to what you actually are getting. But if I don't get anybody on the chat today and I don't get any views today, I have to blame myself for starting so late because I was being fairly consistent about when I was starting otherwise. And I really shouldn't even blame myself that much. The reason I overslept is simply because of the power being out. And we didn't have any problems as far as the power being out. It didn't flicker or anything like that. We haven't had any problems since the reinstall with network, so I'll be eager to see what happens on Friday if we have network internet problems then. Not having any hitching with the mouse. It feels nice and smooth. I haven't felt any of that since the reinstall. No problems as far as frame lags or anything like that. So everything is coming up roses, at least for the moment. And even though I will say Wolfenstein Dueled Blood does kind of feel like a little wonky of a game, its issues I don't think will be exactly the same issues I've had before, so that's not going to lead me to thinking that there's a problem when it really is just that Wolfenstein Dueled Blood could probably be better optimized. And it really doesn't look like there's any new news to talk about either for this Wednesday. Or I could say I started to watch the Giant Bomb cast and fell asleep, so I don't know what they really talked about. But what was interesting is that they made a Power Bomb cast talking about wrestling that included Dan Reichert and most of the main people that you would expect on the Bombcast, and then they put out a Bombcast that had 4 people. That Jeff Grubb was there, and the main guy that is running the show, I guess now, was there, but then there was like 2 other people. So considerably small number of people on the Bombcast this week, and a odd mix. So the idea of emphasizing we're going to be all about games, does not really feel like they're sticking to that very well. But yeah, we shall see what the remaining audience of Giant Bomb feels and how they receive this newest incarnation of Giant Bomb is. It does look like they've changed the logo for the Bombcast to a different logo. But yeah, it kind of doesn't matter too. Like, I've managed to completely wean myself away from looking at any news as far as X-Play and G4. That whole attempt has failed at this point. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.